into these shooting guards, top 10 shooting guards going into the 2023-24 season. This list is going to be very interesting because going into it, before we met up, before this podcast started recording, we had a chance to discuss certain players' positions, right? The likes of DeJounte Murray, who was more of a point guard in San Antonio, but more of a shooting guard in Atlanta, right? Kyrie Irving, who was more of a point guard earlier in his career, but more of a shooting guard these days in his time in Brooklyn and now Dallas beside Luka Doncic. So we're including these guys in the rankings. I'm going to go ahead and start right from the bottom here, Zach. I am going to go with Anthony Simons of the Portland Trailblazers. He comes in at number 10 for me. Oh, no, excuse me. Let me take that back. I messed up there because we did move DeJounte and we did move Kyrie into this list. So my number 10 is actually going to be Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is going to be my number 10 shooting guard going into this session. Mind you, the guys that got taken off based on our conversation before the show. Well, let me go through the list and then we'll go through that. I don't want to give away who's ahead of these guys, but nonetheless, Bradley Beal comes in at my number 10. If you asked me maybe 2 years ago, he'd probably be up there in the top 3 of this category, right? But he has fallen off the last few years in Washington. The efficiency has dropped off, and he just hasn't been the same player. Now, mind you, he's been unmotivated, right? What are you playing for in DC at that point? He goes to a team now in Phoenix where he's going to have a lot of that load reduced, but maybe he can be more of himself as a basketball player, get back to that scoring mentality. Now, the one thing I am interested to see in Phoenix is who takes that more of a playmaker role. Seems like Devin Booker would be that guy, right? But Devin Booker, I would say, is the more efficient scorer. So maybe you try to push Bradley Beal into more of that playmaking role. I'm interested to see how that plays out. But nonetheless, from the drop-off standpoint, I do have Bradley Beal coming in at number 10 here with DeJounte and Kyrie included in this list.
Love it, man. So funny you mentioned Anthony Simons because I was going to be like, damn, he's number 17 for me. I did. My list went down to 28. I'm dumb like that.
He's probably number 12 for me right now. But
okay,
yeah, it's interesting, though.
Who was 11 then?
Number 11 would be CJ McCollum.
Well, same exact here. So we're starting off the list even. I got Bradley Beal as well at number 10.
Wow, interesting. I thought I was maybe low on him, man.
No. It's for me, I mean, this list is about right now. This is how you played last year heading into this year. Yes, the past is involved a little bit. There's the past a little bit, but no projections here. So Bradley Beal, I'm guessing he's going to finish in the top 7 at the end of this year. Either him or Booker won't be on this list by the end of next year, so that's something as well, because one of them will have more minutes at the point guard spot. But they both have averaged 6 assists at their peak. They both can play the role. I'm not saying they're going to play it on a high level, but play it well enough. So I do think I'm really bullish on that combo working in the backcourt. Rotating, playing the point guard position. They both can do it at a good enough level, especially when you put them next to each other. But nobody's missed more games than Bradley Beal over the last literally five years. Which is pretty nuts. So that's the main reason why. I mean, he's coming off a 50 game season, 40, 60, 57. And the lowest points per game he's had since 2017. And that's not on a very good team, not very loaded. And so Bradley Beal's got a lot to improve. I mean, his field goal percentage was an all-time high that last year at the 2. That's great. His 3-point percentage was up as well. But the team needed volume in order to win any games. So, I mean, he just kind of deferred, just played the game. Didn't look like the care and the effort was there. So I'm docking him for that.
That's exactly how I feel about him.
But moving on to number 9, somebody who really cares, who really gives effort every freaking game, who's a grinder, who is only going up from here. And it's yours truly, Tyrese Maxey.
I like it, man. Crazy stuff, man, because he's in the exact same spot on mine. And I know you probably maybe, well, let me say maybe. You maybe thought that maybe I would have him a little bit higher.
I did.
Maybe overrate him a little bit. But the defensive side of the ball comes into factor here for me with Tyrese Maxey and the playmaking aspect as well, right? So Tyrese Maxey is actually 9th on my list as well. But I'll let you kind of digress on that. I am a little biased.
I think he fits with a lot more people. I know he doesn't need as much usage to be successful and have the ball in his hands, but also being a 43% shooter from three, which is 7% higher than Bradley Beal, which is incredible. He checks out great analytically. Yes, defense. And just, I expect a lot more out of Tyrese. I mean, 1% true shooting. Like, this guy gets it done, and he hasn't really been a focal point. You could argue he was the 4th player in the role last year on the Sixers next to Tobias a lot of times. So it is what it is. Where Beal's been number 1 or number 2, I'm giving him his due. And points per game Twitter, come at me. I don't care.
And, there's a world where you do wonder, because when Tyrese Maxey was playing for that little spurt without Ben Simmons on the roster, without James Harden on the roster, he was doing a lot better in the playmaking department. His assist to turnover ratio was good. He was averaging about 5 to 6 assists as well. So you'd like to see a little bit more from the playmaking department there. But he showed that he can, right, if he focuses on it, if he gets the opportunity. But as a scorer, I do agree. He doesn't need a ton of shots to get you to 20 points. But I think that means with more volume, he could do more for you. And ultimately, we need to see him in that situation. Zach, are you still with me here? What happened there? Maybe his device might have died there. Let's see here. There we go.
Damn, don't know what's going on today.
There we go. Welcome back, my man.
I don't know. What did you hear everything I said? I don't know.
I did not hear everything you said. I heard your bit on Maxey. I don't know if you said anything after that, if you heard what I said.
That's good enough. I mean, I'm giving him his due, way better analytically than Beal, and he's just been a better player the last 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the volume perspective is the way to look at this as well. Give him the volume that Beal give him the role that Beal had, right? And what could he do with it on a more efficient standpoint? But I did have to I had to check him here because, I saw a list the other day. I think it was from like Hoops Hype or something like that, where they gave off their top 10 shooting guards, and they had Tyrese Maxey as like top 5. And I just can't do that. And, I look at the guy next on my list in, let's see, we got to decide where we're putting Kyrie in here. Kyrie and DeJounte. I'm going to go with DeJounte right here, and I'm going to leave my guy ahead of it, right? So I'm going to go with DeJounte right here at number 8. And the reason that he ultimately goes ahead of Maxey, obviously not the shooter that Maxey is, or maybe even the scorer in that sense, but he does have the playmaking ability. He is a two-way player to that extent, and that's why I have to hold him over a guy like Maxey and over a guy even like Bradley Beal, right? Because DeJounte Murray does have the experience of playing as a point guard and playmaking and leading the team in that facet. But he straps up on the defensive end. That's probably the biggest part for me. And he balances out a guy like Trae Young in that sense as well. So that's why I ultimately had to keep him over Tyrese Maxey and then also over Bradley Beal from a sense as well. DeJounte Murray, I think, we didn't get to see what he truly looks like next to Trae Young. I think with a better coach and Quinn Snyder, I think we'll maybe get to see that this year and hopefully just see the better fit because he was brought in to balance out Trae Young and that offensive attack and Trae Young's deficiencies. And I feel like we just didn't get to see that come into full fruition, whether that was coaching or the rest of the roster around them or just as simple as health. But I do like DeJounte Murray from that standpoint as a shooting guard at number 8. I'm getting out of order here with adding the min at
We're-
the end, but number 8, I believe, right?
We're matching up again, man. So I also have DeJounte Murray. He's all NBA defense, year in and year again. He brings it on that end, but he's a better shot creator than Maxey. But Maxey's better at getting to the hole, in my opinion. I trust Maxey more around the rim, but DeJounte, I mean, he proved he can play the 2 role next to Trey. I believe in their fit. I saw enough. It's just the rest of the team filling that out and being in Quinn Snyder's system. Completely agree. He also had a pretty damn good playoff. So, yes, it wasn't a team playoff, but it was an individual playoff. I mean, he got the job done there in his role. I mean, averaging 19, 8, and 4. Pretty efficiently, 67 from 3, which is pretty unreal. Sorry, I was reading that wrong. That was back in San Antonio. But yeah, he was 23, 7, and 7. So even better. 38% from 3, 1,000% from the free throw line in a 5-game series with Boston. And he was arguably their best player, you could say, in the playoffs. I would definitely take that argument. He was very clutch in multiple games as well, keeping them
38% from 3
remotely
is good
alive.
Like DeJounte as well. It's a pretty good percentage.
Way better than any regular season he has.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good sign for the future. And you got to imagine, just like DeJounte Murray can create, like maybe Trae Young can get into more of that real playmaking role next year, right? With the type of attention that Trae Young draws.
But play more like Maxey and Steph, just off the ball.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that would be a better route for the Atlanta Hawks to go, right? Coming in above DeJounte Murray, this is who I consider. I didn't know where I wanted to go here, but Desmond Bane is going to come in at number 7 for me. This is a guy that I think is getting better and better. The concern with the short arms has always been a thing. He is a little bit of a different build than you would typically see in the NBA, but he makes it work, man. He gets to the rack. He can shoot the 3 ball like no other, right? We talk about efficiency with Maxey. I believe Desmond Bane has that, maybe even on a higher volume. So when I'm looking at Desmond Bane and looking at this Memphis Grizzlies team, I know people don't like to talk about it. And, you know, Ja Morant probably catches all the headlines most of the time. But there's an argument that Desmond Bane is the best player on this team, right? Like, when you talk about getting into the playoffs and what is effective, you could argue that a game like Desmond Bane's is a little bit more effective once you get to the playoffs, is a little bit more reliable once you get to the playoffs. And he has a stronger build, man. He has a stronger body. But am I going to die on this hill that Desmond Bane's better than Ja Morant? No, I'm not. I'm just saying there is a case to be made there. But this kid, he's just getting started, man. 21.5 points last year in the regular season. Shot 48% from the field, 41% basically from the 3-point line on 7 attempts. So the volume is there. But then the one thing that I wanted to mention, just as far as, why does he go over, say, a Tyrese Maxey, for instance, right? The playmaking ability as well. I do think he's a little bit better of a playmaker than Tyrese Maxey is. And I think he can get his own shot a little bit better than Tyrese Maxey. So, it's interesting, but I do like Desmond Bane, the strength that he presents on the defensive end. Obviously, the length isn't exactly what you would love as far as the arm length, but I do like Desmond Bane's game a lot. He comes in at number 7 for me, man.
I'm right there with you. You also didn't mention he's an elite defender. He can be all NBA defense, in my belief as well. He's been there. He's been a two-way player to the extreme, helping lead a great Memphis defense. He gets overshadowed by Dillon Brooks. He really does on the defensive side of things, and Jaren Jackson Jr., but he's a lead on that end. He really is. And he's just a guy that very few players in the league can say they fit any system. He's this guy. He's the perfect NBA 3-and-D player, but he's got so much more than that. He's developing playmaking. He's developing shot creation. But, I mean, I'd still classify this guy as the top of the top 3-and-D, and it's crazy. I'd say he's up there for most underrated player in the league because you could argue top 30 player in the league, and most people, you talk to them, they'd guess around 50-ish. And he just gets overshadowed by John Jaron. But the dude knows his role. He does exactly what the team needs at all times, and he shows up when the other guys are struggling too. So if they're lacking, he'll step it up. But I expect him to only get better. He could have a Klay Thompson type career. He really could. He's the Clay mold for sure. Just a little shorter, an inch or two shorter, but less wingspan. But I mean, defensively, he's just as good, if not better. And he's improving every category across the board year after year. It's so impressive. So he needs more love in this league, that's for sure.
I agree, man. And I think, when you look at guys who could climb this list next season, I think he's one of those guys that could really, maybe even move into top 5-ish, right? I think he could get there, man. I think he could get there as a two-way player, because the next guy on my list at number 6 is going to be Zach LaVine. And this is a guy that I mentioned, right? I think Desmond Bane could climb this list to climb past Zach LaVine because of his success on the defensive end, because of the other things that he has in his game from a playmaking standpoint. And he's a more efficient shooter, right? I think that's part of it too. But Zach LaVine, as of right now, with the volume, with his role, I do like his game more right now. I like his ceiling more right now. And I think he played pretty well last year. It wasn't, his best season by far, but it was up there with one of his best seasons. And he was able to play the most games that he's played since his sophomore year in Minnesota, actually, as I'm looking at the numbers here. So 77 games last year. He played 82 games in 2015-16 with the Minnesota T-Wolves. 77 games is the most he has played and started since that time. So it's an interesting, from a health standpoint, I think that's been the only detractor for Zach LaVine. He's not the greatest defender despite his athleticism, but I think if you could put him maybe in a better defensive system, right, and a better roster, maybe a contending team, maybe you can get a little bit more out of him on that end with his length and athleticism. But this guy can score the rock. We've seen him, score in the heights of the league. And that's ultimately why I have him ahead of some of these guys on this list. He's just a little bit more polished, a little more established in the league right now. But I do think the likes of a Desmond Bane caliber player, even a DeJounte Murray, who is also another great two-way player. I think those type of guys, if DeJounte can get his shooting percentages up in the regular season, these are guys that could eclipse Zach LaVine, in my opinion. Now, if Zach LaVine could take his game to another level, maybe it takes a change of scenery. Maybe we can have another discussion. But there's part of me that thinks Zach LaVine kind of is what he is at this point, right? Like I don't think he's gonna get any too much better than what he is, right? And that's kind of where I'm at with Zach LaVine. Nonetheless, comes at 6 on the list, which is not bad.
Yeah, so we've been pretty boring. We've been identical this whole time. And so this is the first little disagreement. I'm just going to give Zach his flowers here. I got him up one spot at 5. We'll talk about Zach here. But the reason why he played 77 games, I got Kyrie at 6. And that's just because mainly personality. I don't think the value they bring to the team, though, is that much different. Kyrie's playmaking is a little better right now, and ball handling, but not a ton. And games played, it's given Zach the edge, be more valuable, and just I think he's one of the best teammates for sure. And
that's fair.
He's very clutch. He's very clutch as well. So I got those two flipped right now. I will say with Zach, I think he's a lot like Devin Booker early in his career, where as soon as Devin got talent around him, it just raised the bar, and he adapted with them, and he got better with them. I think that's the only way LaVine gets better, is having better fits around him.
Yeah.
He needs more defense, just better players around him in general. But I think he's incredibly underrated as well. I think you switch him with some of these guys above him, he's above these players. I think he's that good. I really do. I'm bullish on Zach LaVine. He is one of the most efficient shooting guards in a long time. I'll tell you this. So 40 point, 50, 100 games. It means 50% from the field, 50 from 300.
Mm-hmm.
Steph Curry is on top of the list with 1 million of them, but like Zach LaVine is in the top 7 for this. And only other guys that are on that list are like MJ and James Harden and the greatest scorers of all time. So you got Steph with 30, and then you got Zach LaVine with 9. So then it's James Harden's there, LeBron, Kyrie Irving's on the list too, Damian Lillard, Jordan, and Kevin Durant. So that's about as efficient of a great game as it can get. Yeah. No, that's how good Zach LaVine is. And I think there's a little bit of defense in him because he cares and he wants to be great, but like he's saving it, he's saving it for a better situation because
I feel that.
It's kind of like Harden and a lot of other guys too, is like when they feel like the team's there, they'll give more effort on that end. And for it to mean something so you can prolong your career. But yeah, number 5, I said I had Kyrie. Who do you have at 5?
Number 5 for me is actually Kyrie. So you had Kyrie at 6 and you had LaVine at 5, right?
Yes. Yep.
Gotcha. So then I just have it backwards. I had Kyrie at number 5.
Sorry, I said that wrong.
No worries. I knew what you meant. So, for me, Kyrie, it's interesting from a skill and ceiling standpoint. I guess is why I hold Kyrie over Zach LaVine. But you do mention a great point, which is games played. And as I'm learning from you, I think that's something that I'm starting to take from you a little bit, is how much that matters to me, because looking from the outside in, you always say it, availability is the best characteristic that you can have as far as a star player. So you look at Kyrie Irving and it's like, man, Zach LaVine played 77 games last year, and Kyrie Irving hasn't played north of 67 since 2018-19. He played 67 with Boston. His last season before that was 72 games in Cleveland in 2016 and 17. So nonetheless, it has not been a ton of games played in the last few years. 2019-20 was the worst by far. He only played 20 games. 2021-22, he only played 29 games. Then last year he played 60 games. So yeah, from that standpoint, he's just not reliable, right? He's always finding a reason to not play basketball. Some of it is justified, some of it is not. And some of it we just don't even know about, right? We don't know why you missed that time. But nonetheless, I do get your point. The ceiling is ultimately why I kind of shoved Kyrie in that spot ahead of Zach LaVine. If I'm in one game and I need a bucket, if I need a great scoring night from somebody, who is going to be that guy that's going to go and get it for me? I kind of lean Kyrie in that sense, right? He's one of the best scorers that I've honestly ever seen in my life. If I'm being completely honest, you talk about finishing at the rim, just the pure shooting stroke, the fluidity of his game. It's kind of one of the smoothest games I've ever seen. So maybe that's the basketball savant in me that wants to give Kyrie that credit. But to your point, I can see why you would hold LaVine into the top 5 over Kyrie Irving, just from a playing standpoint. And they're just not that far when it comes to production, right? When they're on the court, it's not like Kyrie is just blowing LaVine out of the water. It's not like that. So I do get your perspective, and it kind of makes me want to lean. Maybe if I, had more time to think of Kyrie in this field, maybe I do put him behind LaVine. So you got me thinking there, but I'll stick with my rankings and keep Kyrie in my top 5 here at number 5.
I mean,
what did you want to say about Kyrie?
I don't got anything to add other than
games played, right?
Guard. He's been a shooting guard the last few years, and that's why he belongs on this list. And yes, people are so caught up on his aesthetics. He's a beautiful player. Yes, he's one of the most beautiful players, but I like players who are beautiful a lot, not just a couple times a year.
Fair enough.
And so that matters. I don't think he makes many people around him better. I just think he's a ceiling raiser, which Zach LaVine is too. He's a ceiling raiser, and we've proved that. But if you switch out Devin Booker and Zach LaVine, I still love Phoenix. I really do.
Yeah.
I love them to a core. Same with, like, if you put Zach LaVine with James Harden instead of DeMar DeRozan, I think that team's so much better, and he makes Zach LaVine better. There's just so many situations like that.
Yeah.
Steph Curry, it's just Zach LaVine hasn't played with great teams yet. Jimmy Butler was just kind of finding his own then. So let's move to number 4. This is where it gets interesting. I think this order can be 1 through 4 is very, very close. I really believe that. But this guy is his defense is what sets him apart from the rest. And right now it's Jaylen Brown at number 4 for me. And basically it's his handle. It's too many lackluster performances in the playoffs versus the other guys. And being a number 2 option, and that's a part of it, but being on loaded teams and not just putting up great numbers on a loaded team and kind of underachieving a bit. I truly believe that.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown comes in at number 4 for me as well, man. So we match there. All the same reasons as you mentioned, right? He doesn't have a left hand. He can't drive left. Like, that's obviously a big deficiency that was pointed out this postseason, right? The playmaking, as far as making guys better, I don't think that he excels in that department either. But from a scoring standpoint, he can light it up when he's locked in, and he does strap up on the defensive end, so that is a benefit as well. He's a two-way player. And we're getting into where the little things matter now, right? Where ball handling and playmaking, that is going to move you below some of these other guys that are on this list. And it's as simple as that for me. I think at this point we start to point out detractors for these players is why they're not above the next player, and that is it. It's the ball handling, it's the playmaking, it's the making players better around you. I think Jason Tatum struggles with that as well. They got 2 guys that kind of struggle in that same department, but I think Tatum has more room to figure it out. So with Jaylen Brown, you would like to see him improve on the ball handling, improve going to his left, and add that to his game, see what that opens up for him. But as of right now, I have to go with these other 3 guys I have ahead of him. Number 3 for me is going to be Spida, Donovan Mitchell from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Man, he's a tough guy, right? His game is one of my favorite games in the NBA. He's not one of my favorite players. I just don't particularly love his personality. But to each their own. He's allowed to act however he wants. He balls out, and he grinds it out. I do love that about him. I will say that. And he is a leader, I believe. I think he has good leadership qualities in him. Now, we got to see what he looked like in a different organization outside of Utah. He was still able to put up the crazy numbers that he normally does. It didn't come to fruition in the postseason, but I'm interested to see how this next season goes. I'm interested to see the future of him in Cleveland. The one deficiency that I would mark on Donovan Mitchell, which ultimately leads me to rank the guys I have ahead of him ultimately, is on the defensive end. He's not like a terrible defender. He's not maybe a guy that doesn't try hard on the defensive end of the ball. He's just a little undersized for a shooting guard. And that's ultimately what I look at as the one detractor for Donovan Mitchell. I think it's not a detractor if you have the right pieces around him, but I think on a team with Darius Garland, where you have 2 guards that are a little undersized in comparison to a typical shooting guard size, right? Darius Garland can't operate as that shooting guard, and neither Donovan Mitchell isn't the height of a typical shooting guard either. Whereas look at Philadelphia, for example. James Harden is like a 6'5" shooting guard, but he's playing the point guard position, so it balances out with Tyrese Maxey, who's around 6'1", 6'2", a little bit of an undersized guard. I think when you have one of those guys in your backcourt, it works beautifully, and it can work. I do worry about that in Cleveland, but nonetheless, that's not Donovan Mitchell's fault entirely, right? How the guys fit around him. So just to keep it light on Donovan Mitchell, the ceiling, right? What he can reach when he is on and locked in. It's up there in the best of the NBA, and this guy is a really, really good, high-quality player. I'm not going to try to diminish him any more than what I have.
Yeah, so I'm a huge Donovan Mitchell fan. I always have been since Louisville.
Louisville days, yeah.
But
maybe that's why I don't like him.
Him, Brown, Levine, the other guy, like I love most of this top 10, like personality and how they play. Like the only guys I'm not too fond of, and I'm just a guy that likes a lot of guys, but like the shooting guard specifically is arguably my favorite players in the league. Like
likely.
Kyrie, Desmond Bain, Maxey. I like Maxey, so but he's still got to rise a little bit for me. Personality as a leader. I love his personality off the court. But mainly Kyrie, Desmond Bain, DeJounte, CJ, and then some of the guys less than that I'm not the biggest fan of, but everybody else I just love on this list. So no true biases. The thing with Donovan Mitchell here, he had the best regular season of all these guards. Like it's not even that close for me. He had his best year ever. He was in the MVP race for like 80-90% of the year in my estimation, and just kind of fell off as his team started losing some games at the end of the year, but also didn't have the other stats outside of scoring. But he had the what was it, 70 or 80 he had this year? That was freaking nuts.
Yeah. I want to say it was 71. I want to say it was 71. I remember.
Yeah, I think I'd know if it was 80. I'm saying 71.
Yeah.
But he can continue to keep getting better because his teammates are going to get better, and it makes it easier for him. So rebounds and assists might go up, but I think just even his 3-point percentage, a career high last year at 39%. Like I think he can get into the 40s there with his teammates around him, improving and getting spacing up. But the dude's clutch. He's a leader. The reason why he's here, though, not number one, is because of the playoffs. The other two guys ahead of him had a way better playoffs. This was Donovan's arguably worst playoffs. And that says a lot. And it wasn't talked about enough how he underachieved in the playoffs and let a lot of people down for sure, because they should have easily won, I think, against New York. But shout out to my boy at number 2. I got Anthony Edwards. He was electric in the playoffs. He performed night in, night out. Didn't have a ton of help around him, but he showed up. He gave it everything he got, and he got so much better defensively this year. That's another separator between him and Mitchell. I don't think Mitchell's a negative defender, but he can be a lot of nights. But Anthony Edwards is becoming a very, very, very good defender, and he's a better defender than most guys on this list besides Bain, DeJounte, and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, no, and Edwards comes in at number 2 for me as well, man. And it was partly what we saw in the playoffs of him just kind of going nuclear in some of those games, really showing what his ceiling looks like. But you mentioned it. It's the athleticism. It's the two-way factor that makes you really love Anthony Edwards, and ultimately why I have to kind of push him up ahead of a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who can obviously score the rock at an elite level. But Ant Edwards, I think he's only going to get more consistent. I think that this USA experience is going to help him so much going into next season. It's going to mature him a lot, I believe. And I think it is going to make him believe more in team basketball, playing with, higher level of competition within their own team, within their own USA team, and having to fit in defensively, having a head coach, right, like Steve Kerr, who has won NBA championships, knows how to lead his players in the right direction. So just getting that type of experience. But speaking to what Anthony Edwards is, I mean, he averaged close to 25 points last year, shot 46% from the field, 37% from 3, average 6 rebounds, close to 5 assists. So he's doing it in all departments. And I do think he has room to get even better as a playmaker with his athleticism, the way he can get into the lane, the threat that he provides at finishing. I think a lot of guys are going to come close that down when he hits the lane. That's going to open up opportunities as they start to put better players around him. But yeah, I love Anthony Edwards. I think the biggest thing for me with Ant is like his personality. It's like the exact player. Like if you ask me out of this entire list of like personality wise, he's probably the guy that I would take first, man. Like his
Let's
mentality
go. I agree.
is meant for great things. And I think great things lie ahead for him. And great things ultimately, if they lie ahead for him, they lie ahead for your Minnesota T-Wolves there, man. So I've enjoyed this offseason, chatting with you and being able to boast this man up because he is one of my favorite players as well. And I obviously don't have any ties to Minnesota, so no real reason for me to be biased for him, but just want to give him his flowers. As you mentioned earlier with Levine, I want to give Ant his flowers. Reaching number 2 on this list is pretty incredible. I mean, you're over
22, man. He's only 22.
Kyrie Irving, like that is insane. You're talking about some of the most skilled players in our league history, in a sense. So when you're talking from that standpoint, got to give the nod to Anthony Edwards, which means that there's only one guy left for both of us, and it is that man, Devin Booker. I would imagine that's your number one, but I won't put words into your mouth. Devin Booker, he's that guy, right? He's showed over the last few seasons that he can lead a team, and he can lead a team to high places in the playoffs, taking the Suns to the NBA Finals, a couple seasons ago against the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously couldn't finish it off against that great Bucks team, but now he's got all the reinforcements that he could ever imagine. And he's done it the last few seasons. When CP3 goes down, he's had to lead the way. When DeAndre Ayton's not in his right mindset, he's had to lead the way. And even with KD coming to the team last year in the postseason, you still see Devin Booker lead the way, man. He doesn't shy away from leading this team. And ultimately, that's why I have to have him number 1 on this list. The playoff experience, the playoff success, but also the mentality. For him to stick in Phoenix through all of those bad seasons with Robert Sarver and the things that were coming out about him shows the type of mentality that Devin Booker's working with there to stick it out to get to where he is now, which is a very successful contender going into this season. So I think Devin Booker, once again, obviously KD's a great talent. That's a discussion for another day. I think Devin Booker will continue to lead this Suns team, whether that's in playmaking, leadership, scoring, whatever the facet may be. I do think Devin Booker is going to continue to lead this team, even with the talented additions that they've added over the offseason. But he checks all the boxes. I'll let you digress on him as we close the show here, man.
Yeah, no, I tend to, just by how the playoffs went, tend to lean Devin Booker is going to be the number 1 option, just with KD, with age too, and just taking a little bit of a back seat. But at the same time, Bradley Beal there now. That's why I kind of expect Anthony Edwards to be number 1 on this list next year, because I do think he has the highest ceiling. And he wants to. I mean, he talks about chasing MJ, and he's on track. I mean, as long as we start winning some playoff series, even though he's got time, he's 22 years old. He's doing it all from all ends. But where he's not like these other guys, though, like Anthony Edwards analytically is still like PER, win shares, all of that Raptor, like he's still behind everyone. That's a thing. Like efficiency wise, I mean, he needs to get his free throw percentage up, and just a couple other things to turn that up a bit, and that's where he's lacking. But Devin Booker too, here's a crazy thing for you. Like Zach LaVine, call me insane, he had a better regular season last year than Devin Booker. I'm serious. He played 77 games. He was efficiency too. More efficient, way more efficient. Devin Booker only played 53. And he only shot 35% from 3. Devin Booker's number 1 on this list, which I think it's a list that's going to be going up and down with these players for a long time. I think so many of these guys are so close, and that's what makes this list exciting, even though we are pretty set in our lists right now. It's just, it can be ever changing. I just think their abilities are very equal. It's just how many games they're playing, how they're performing that season. So that's what's going to make this fun. But Booker was so damn good and had an all-time postseason. That's why he's up here, and that's what matters the most. But he wasn't like better than a lot of these guys. In the regular season, you could argue. I think he was better than Ant in the regular season, but Donovan Mitchell for sure was better. Zach LaVine, not Desmond Bane, but that's about it. Those guys there, but like Donovan Mitchell, I could see him being number one on this list too.
Yeah.
I feel like he can get there. He
has
bad
it. It's just that was it.
Guys besides Ant though that you could see really climbing up this list. Ant's really the only one to me that could be number one. It's going to be between him and Booker, but I don't know. What do you think? Can anybody else jump that we mentioned the top 10?
Do we feel like Jaylen Brown is set in his ways, right? Like, is he just kind of what he is?
No, I think he could get better at finishing around the rim and become a better playmaker, but will he? Will the team allow it too? I mean,
right. Is there room for him to become
now that Porzingis is there, that's, less usage for him. So if anything, I don't see Jaylen Brown going much higher than 4 here. I think he could go a little backwards, but it wouldn't shock me if he got to number 2 or 3. It definitely wouldn't shock me, but like, I don't see the road for it, especially with Porzingis being there now.
And I agree with you there. Yeah, I would say Ant Edwards, Donovan Mitchell. I would give a slight chance. I would give a slight chance to Jaylen Brown. Hey, let's Maxey can climb the list. I think he could climb to possibly top 5. There is a concern for me though with Maxey and with Harden appearing to be out the door. Does he become more of a point guard next year, right? So
that's another thing. He'll probably be on the point guard list next year.
We'll have to factor in too. So that's the other thing that can change with these players, right? Is Devin Booker more of a point guard next year? Maybe he's not on this list. Like maybe Bradley Beal's the point guard. Maybe he's not on this list. So it is interesting from that aspect. But I would say Donovan Mitchell, Ant Edwards, slight chance to Jaylen Brown for getting up. I don't even know if Jaylen Brown, like, could he be better than Devin Booker? Like, will I ever view it that way? I don't know. I can't set. It needs to be
very visible.
I need to be fluid, but
it need to be very visible.
It would take a lot.
To be clutch either.
Exactly. He's faltered in the biggest moments in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's a concern. So let's just go with Donovan Mitchell and Edwards in that category of yes, they could potentially get to that number 1 spot next year, man.
I want to finish up with this. So I got a couple randoms I want to throw out there as I did my big list. So 14, like the San Antonio Spurs, it's weird who's going to be their 2 guard because they got a bunch of guys that played 2 guard minutes and their positions are uncertain. But Keldon Johnson I had at 14, Devin Vassell 18. I think Vassell's got a much higher ceiling. And then Malachi Branham down at 28 for me.
Nice.
But like, who do you like out of that group? Like, I think Vassell could crack the top 10 eventually.
I think Vassell is that guy, man, from an efficiency standpoint, a higher volume possibly, and playing off of a guy like Victor Wembanyama, adding him to the mix there to take a little bit of attention as well is only going to open up the court a little bit more for Vassell. So, I think in a bigger role going forward, more volume. Obviously, he showed what he can do this season, averaging north of 18 points. I think that can increase. And, I think he could get to that point. Shot close to 39% from 3 last year. Needs to grow as a playmaker, sure. But right now, I would think out of those 3 guys that you mentioned, as far as cracking the top 10 potentially next season or next offseason, I think he would be the guy that I would pick out of those 3.
And then the last 2 I'll mention because there's guys like RJ Barrett, Austin Reeves.
Where does RJ Barrett come in on your list? I'm curious.
16, but which is very disappointing.
Yeah. Austin Reeves, I have him at 15. Okay.
Right between Keldon and RJ. But the 2 guys I wanted to shout out that I really think will take the biggest leap are Jaden Ivey at 20 and Jalen Williams from OKC.
Okay.
At 21. I think both those guys have star potential, and they're going to be knocking on the top 10 sooner than later. I really believe that.
I like those picks. How do you feel about Jalen Green?
Jalen Green, that's a great shout out. That needed to be said. He's at 12 for me, right behind CJ McCollum.
I contemplated on him, man. Obviously, I didn't factor in DeJounte and Kyrie at that point because obviously we discussed that going into the show. But I thought about him at least in this list.
So his ceiling for like next year, I think he could finish as high as 4 or 5. I really believe that.
I like that. Yeah.
But I just don't see a path for now to get to number 1, just because I need to see more out of him in winning situations. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Like he's Devin Booker early on his career, Zach LaVine early on in his career. He's ahead of Zach LaVine, I'd definitely say. But like Donovan Mitchell was doing winning things, even though he's in a better organization and a better team.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to say, like, to get any higher than that 4 or 5 without seeing him in any sort of winning situation, where like that's what Austin Reeves' benefit is, why he's sitting up at 15, because we know what he's doing in those situations, and that he can hang.
Yeah, no, I do think that has to be weighed in, and that's Austin Reeves was a thought here as well, which he would end up a little bit further down the list than say like a Jalen Green, but I do think you got to see what these guys can provide in the big moments, and that has to be a big factor in, which obviously that's why Devin Booker's at the top of this list. But yeah, playoff success matters, man, and it's going to be interesting once we get well, I guess it won't be interesting. There's only a few centers in the league, but ranking them, I think we know how those rankings are going to go, but it'll be interesting as we go through small forwards, power forwards, kind of how we classify those different position groups as well. But yeah, man, we'll have to finish up after we do all these position rankings and go with just our maybe our top, whatever. Maybe we do like a top 25 holistically or something going into the season.
Sounds good, dude.
Yeah, man, but great list. I think we agreed on a lot of this one compared to the point guards per se. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that means the shooting guards are a little bit more clear cut per se than the point guards, but that position group should fill up as the years go on. We got a lot of potential in that position group. But guys, that is going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA featuring my man Zak Noble. Once again, you can find Zak at Zak Noble on Twitter, also known as X now. You can find me at Scotty Drowned. Yeah, throw up the X. No, never mind. I take that back. That's Des Bryant. I got to take that back. But nonetheless, you can find me at Scotty Drowned, guys. Have a great rest of your Tuesday there, and see you next week. Peace.
Deuces.